Hi, it's Cara Riley, and welcome to the Landscape Photography Show. This is episode number 13, and we're going to have so much fun tonight. We're going to be taking virtual photo tours with some of our landscape photography curators. But before we get to go, I just want to tell and send out love, prayers, and support to all of those places within Colorado, within Arizona, where we've had a terrible natural disaster and some deaths, just knowing that our love is surrounding all of them. And we appreciate all of the support. Margaret posted a really nice post in memory. So we'll think about that, and we're going to get going right here with someone who's right from Arizona. We're going to start with Jim Worthman, and he is going to introduce himself and share a wonderful virtual photo tour.
Thanks, Cara. I'm Jim Worthman. I consider myself an amateur enthusiast photographer, do mostly landscapes. I like both color and black and white. And I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. I am a curator in the landscape photography theme and a moderator in the landscape photography community. So with that, let's jump into a virtual photo tour that kind of highlights really the diversity of landscapes in Arizona. I say virtual because we're going to visit a lot of places, but it's also kind of virtual in time. These were taken at various times of the year, and really there are so many places within a day's drive of Phoenix that it was hard to pick. One resource I recommend, and we'll add it to the show notes, is Photograph America, which does a good job. It's a newsletter, does a good job of highlighting what a photographer would be interested in visiting a lot of these areas. So tonight we're going to visit Sedona and then on to the Page area. And with that, let me start my screen share. Okay. And so we'll start with just a little bit of preparation. This is pretty common for if I'm going to be gone for, you know, a week or 10 days. And the two things I want to draw to your attention, one is the water. You see a lot of water there. And when you're going in Arizona off the beaten path, you never know when you're going to get hung up somewhere for hours or even a day or two. So it's wise to bring way more water than you think you're going to need. Also, the blue bin has got a lot of tools, and if it were the winter, it would have materials for starting a fire and extra blankets and so forth. But you really want to be prepared when you head out.
And how much of that is camera equipment?
Yeah, in the bin, none of it. And usually, you know, I'll keep a laptop in the bin and extra power cords and all of that. But in this photo, you can't see the camera gear. So to get from Phoenix to Sedona, there are a lot of different ways to go. Some are shorter, but tonight we're going to go along a scenic route. It's a bit longer. This says from Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, it's 2 hours and 43 minutes, courtesy of Google. And we'll look at a little more detailed map, and what you can see is you go up I-17 and you go a bit to the east and a bit to the north of Sedona. And again, there are shorter ways to get there, but this is called Schnebly Hill Road, and it's really a neat drive, as long as it's not winter, because they close it in the winter, and as long as it's not rained lately. Four-wheel drive is recommended, but certainly not required. You see passenger cars on there all the time. So here's an example of the kind of scenery you're going to see when you first leave the interstate and start down Schnebly Hill. You kind of thought Sedona, so you'd see red rocks, right? Well,
Right.
Up in the high country, there's a lot of diverse landscapes in it, and there are really some gorgeous areas near Sedona that have nothing to do with red rock. Surprise, surprise. But after you go down a couple miles down the road, it kind of opens up and you get nice panoramic views of Sedona and red rock country, and you know, in this particular shot, you see some nice clouds. I think those are monsoon clouds, not positive of the time of the year. But it's definitely, if you have the time, and it hasn't rained lately, it's definitely worth checking out Schnebly Hill Road.
I really like the depth in that picture.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. And yeah, I like to go for strong foreground, so it's Arizona, so you get cactus. Another nice attraction in Sedona, it's very, very popular attraction, is the Chapel of the Holy Cross. It's actually a church that's built right into the side of one of these red rock buttes. It's a nice place to photograph and just wander around. Highly recommend it. Now we're going to move to Sedona with snow. And you may not have thought about Sedona having snow, but a couple times a year it'll get belted. So if your timing's right, you can get up there and enjoy some spectacular photography. And I'm not going to talk a lot about these. These were mostly taken on Red Rock Loop Road in West Sedona, which also is the road you take to get down to Red Rock Crossing for those iconic views of Cathedral Rock. And here's a shot of Cathedral Rock, but from up on Red Rock Loop Road.
Now
And,
that is awesome.
That is,
That is awesome.
that's an amazing shot. So is Aslan.
yeah, again, Sedona in snow is just,
So now, did you use the ePro?
I used Nick Silver FX Pro for this shot. Yeah.
That's what I thought. They're silver effects. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, you made it. You made that rock. Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And here's a shot of Bear Mountain from Boynton Pass Road. Again, it's in West Sedona.
Now, have you shared that one on the theme?
I think so, but you know, a number of these I've shared quite a long time ago, so it's probably worth pushing a couple of them out there again. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's 112 in Phoenix, you should be sharing these.
Yeah.
This is a formation called the Elders, and again, we're still in the snow theme, right? The Elders is a formation in West Sedona. It's fairly close to Route 89, and so it's fairly accessible. And if you look at it right, it looks like Native American elders climbing up the side of a hill. And here's we're going to move away from the snow shots here. So here's another view of the elders during the monsoon season. And so there really is red rock in Sedona. Okay. Next, we're going to move up north of Sedona, about 10 miles north on Route 89A, to a branch of Oak Creek called West Fork. They have a fairly small parking area. Go early. On the weekends, go real early because the parking lot fills up. But it's just a wonderful place. It's a bit cooler than being down in Sedona, but you just get all kinds of interesting foliage. It's especially beautiful when there are fall colors. Highly recommended. But again, it's popular. A lot of people head out of Phoenix and like to head up into West Fork for the hike. And you can hike, you know, a quarter mile and get some nice shots. You can hike 3 miles and go all the way to the end, and then 3 more miles back out. It's not all that challenging. Not a lot of elevation change, and really a nice hike. It is Sedona, and if you haven't heard, Sedona is real big into New Age culture. So this is, honest to goodness, something that somebody had set up once when I was hiking West Fork, and I don't know what exactly they were doing with the pyramid, but it was New Agey, whatever it was. Now on to a place called the Pulaski Heritage Site. Pulaski means red house in the Hopi language. This is located also in West Sedona in the Coconino National Forest, and there's a bit of a hike to get up there. It's not, you know, terribly challenging, but there is a bit of a hike. But it's kind of a neat ruin to go visit. And if you're in Sedona, it's worth, you know, calling ahead because they do like to call people to call ahead so they know you're going to come. And go out and visit Pulaski.
Right. Is that site managed by the state?
I believe it is. I don't think it's a national monument.
Okay. I really like how you framed this one with the all the green,
Thanks, Mark.
the lush green. It just really brings out that red.
Thank you. And no trip to Sedona would be complete without a visit to Red Rock Crossing. So here's the my obligatory shot of Cathedral
Oh, that's
Rock.
your icon shot, Jim.
Yeah. At sunset. And if you look in the distance, you can see a dusting of snow on the mountains in the background. So this was a winter shot.
Now that's what I want. I want that one.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to move on, and I'm kind of running longer than I wanted to, but we're going to go to Page, and I have quite a number of things that we can visit in the area around Page. Now, two things to point out on this map. It's from Sedona. It's about a 3-hour drive. However, if you look at the little yellow thing on the left side, you notice there's a warning that says this route may have road closures. Well, in fact, it does. There was a landslide up fairly about 3/4 of the way up to Page, and the road's closed. So they're working on an alternate route, but it's not ready yet. They're paving one of the Indian roads. So for the time being, this is the route you want to take, and it adds about 40-45 minutes to your trip. You turn at Tuba City and go up the back way. But the roads are good, and honestly, it's kind of an interesting drive. Okay, so had the road been open, you would be able to see this view on your way to Page. But since the road, actually the landslide was not too far from where this was taken. And this is a view looking toward the Vermilion Cliffs in the distance, looking across the plains. The canyons you can see were carved by the Colorado River. Yeah. This was taken from the Echo Cliffs. And here's another one a little further up the road toward Page. The mountain you can see kind of on the right side in the midground is Echo Peak. And again, in the background are the Vermilion Cliffs.
Say, Jim?
Yes.
Could you show us one mediocre picture so everybody can feel like they can do better than that?
Coming up.
Okay.
If Carl lets me go that far, yes, you'll see one.
All right, we need at least one.
Maybe we should look at the pretty pictures.
Yeah.
Run us through the pictures, and we can feel bad.
Yeah. So Horseshoe Bend is about 5 or so minutes south of Page, and you got to go to Horseshoe Bend. It's about a 15-minute walk up over a sand dune. There's a little bit of a climb and walking through sand, but it's worth it. This shot was taken at about 11 o'clock at night under the light of a full moon.
Wow.
Wow.
And it's not HDR. The challenge with Horseshoe Bend, if you're not going to do HDR, is the dynamic range. Because at sunset, the whole front of this would be in shadow, and at sunrise, well, again, you're going to have shadow from the cliff you're standing on. So it's a challenge in terms of light, but rewarding if you have the patience to do it.
What color balance did you use for moonlight long exposure?
I'm pretty sure daylight. I mean, well, no, let me take that back. I generally always use automatic white balance, and then I probably, in post, white balanced it on the clouds.
Okay.
Now, how bad of a walk is it up there? I've heard it's really, really bad. I wouldn't make it.
A couple hundred feet of elevation gain, Margaret, and in sand. But if you take your time, it's not bad. Once you get up to the top, there's what's that?
I don't think it's bad at all. It's pretty easy.
Well, I'll tell you from my experience, Margaret, you just don't want to go with people who are in a hurry, and you take your time, and it's a challenge coming back, so you need 2 bottles of water, one going down, but you really don't want to go in the summer. It's a killer coming back up the hill in the summer. You need to go when the weather's cooler.
Yeah, of course, if you want nice monsoon clouds, well, there you go. So here's a winter shot. Same place, just a slightly different angle during the winter. And once you're done shooting Horseshoe Bend, as you're heading into Page, the thing to do is go to Waweep Overlook. It's on the north side of Page, so you cross the dam, and then you go up onto this little hill that overlooks Lake Powell and Page in the distance. But it's really a neat place to go. I'm not sure if they want to chase you out at sunset, but well, at least on this day they didn't. And it's kind of a nice overview of the city. And I will say, once you've finished shooting Wawee Overlook, then you want to go find somewhere for dinner, and I recommend Fiesta Mexicana. So really nice Mexican food, and kind of my favorite restaurant in Page. And also, I would recommend, once you've finished your dinner, you go find your hotel. I like the Days Inn. It's kind of on the south side of Page. And if you go, say hi to Tracy and Helen, and they'll probably tell you all about Gary Ladd, who's a well-known photographer based in Page. His work is hanging all over the Days Inn, in the lobby, in the rooms, and so they'll tell you stories about Gary. So next, we're going to move on to Alstrom Point. And Alstrom is a couple-hour leisurely drive from downtown Page. It's also on the North Shore. You're driving along the southern edge of the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, so it's a very picturesque drive. But I will say, you want to go with a high-clearance vehicle at a minimum, and four-wheel drive is better, because once you hit this sign, you're on a reasonably good dirt road, but once you hit this sign, you then turn south and head toward Lake Powell, and at that point, a lot of the drive is on slick rock, and it's not marked. So you have to be cautious about where you're driving and pick your way out to the edge. Once you've done it, it's not hard to find your way back. So if you're adventuresome and you have the right vehicle, definitely give it a go.
You mean you don't know where the road's at?
There's no road. It's just slick rock sandstone.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So here's one of the views from Alstrom, and this is Gunsight Butte that's lit up in the sunset light, and in the distance is Navajo Mountain, kind of framed in the gunsight. And another view, the colors and the clouds out at Alstrom can be spectacular. Again, highly recommended.
Yeah, those clouds are awesome.
And the drive's a bit of an adrenaline rush too, so you got to do it. Okay, so after Alstrom, we're going to go to the Wave. You got to go to the Wave, which is in Coyote Buttes. It's in the Vermilion Cliffs National Monument, and actually you start right in very southern Utah. You hike for about 2.5 hours, and you get to this place. It's a tedious hike, but again, just a spectacular area. And
Jim,
yes.
How did you, back to that just a previous photo, how did you balance the light on the stone in the foreground against the sky? Was that a simple exposure, or was there some complexity to that?
No, it was simple. I mean, I watch the histogram to make sure the clouds aren't blown out, and then just go for it. I always bracket. Almost none of these shots are HDR.
Okay.
There's one exception coming up. But yeah, just amazing red rocks. This is nearby the Wave. But
Jim, do you want to mention anything about the permit process there? Because that's
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
And glad you brought that up, because you have to get a Bureau of Land Management permit to go into these areas. And there are 2 different permits: one for the Wave, North Coyote Buttes, and one for what you're seeing here, South Coyote Buttes. And it's much harder to get the permit for North because it's more popular. And you can sign up online if you're really lucky, a couple months in advance, and get a permit online. They give out 10, or they sell 10 permits. If you don't get one online, you need to go to the BLM office, and I think that currently they're doing it out of Kanab, Utah. So that's a bit of a drive as well. You go to Kanab, and if more than 10 people show up, which they often do, there's a lottery process. So it's typical to go back repeatedly until you get your permit. The good news is there's a lot of other stuff to do during the day if you didn't get a permit. The permits are always for the following day.
So Jim, have you written all this up on a blog post?
No.
Okay, is that something you might want to do so that if people are watching this and want to take this, that they would have links to all of the places you're talking about and getting the permit?
Yeah, that's kind of a neat idea. It'll take some time to write it up and gather all the appropriate links, but I could do that.
Okay, so now we're at 25 minutes now, and I know I'm the keeper of the watch. So.
I'm going to go fast. I will tell you, if you want to go to South Coyote Buttes, these last couple shots, you really ought to get a guide. And my recommendation is Overland Canyon Tours out of Page. And tell Charlie I said hello. If you do that, because of the nature of the roads, you don't want to do it on your own for the first time. So here are a couple shots from Old Paria Town Site in Utah. Going to go fast. And then I'm going to end, thankfully, with a few shots from Antelope Canyon. And these are mostly lower antelope. Oh, that was my HDR. That's about a 7 or 8 shot HDR. Generally in the slot canyons, you don't get sky because the dynamic range is too great. I also typically avoid any rock that's directly illuminated by the sun because I prefer to not do HDR. So anyway, and most of these are on my stream. All right, so to close, after you're done with this trip, you're heading back to Phoenix. What better thing to do than stop at Rock Springs Cafe, which is near New River. It's north of Phoenix on Route 17. It has its own exit, and you got to go if you like pecan pie. And Cara, there's the nasty photo that I told you. I promised you I'd have a nasty photo.
Oh, the DAC. But you know what? It's a virtual. It's no calories. Give me another piece.
Absolutely.
I kind of like it. That looks pretty good.
It looks great. Well, thanks, Jim. Okay.
So I'm trying to unshare. Okay, I guess it worked. So I guess the only other thing I want to say is there are a lot of beautiful places in the Southwest, and I'm interested in whoever's watching. Should we do this again? And please let us know in the show comments. Thanks.
Great. Okay, Jim.
Sorry for running long.
All right. So, Margaret, now we're going to go to Kansas City.
Okay, let's see.
Margaret. She's got some great shots to share with us.
Okay, I'm going to share a little bit about a place called Burr Oak Woods, which is real close to where I live. It's in Blue Springs, Missouri. And just to give you an idea here, this is Kansas City, the whole metropolitan area. And then east of there is Independence. Now, Independence, Missouri is the home of Harry Truman, the president, and this is where all the wagon trains went west. The Oregon Trail, Santa Fe Trail, and the California Trail all started in Independence, Missouri. So this was a huge scene of activity in the early 1800s as settlers were headed to California to find gold or just headed west. You see the Missouri River up here, which cuts across the entire state of Missouri to St. Louis. And then down here, the next area, this is Blue Springs, Missouri, and here you see the Burr Oaks conservation area. Now, Burr Oaks, it's large. It runs about 1,100 acres. That's there, and this entire area at one time was farmland and woodlands before that. This Pink Hill Road, my ancestors all had farms to the north here and part of what is now this Burr Oak Woods. It has lots of nature trails. You can walk through the woods. It's especially beautiful in the fall when you've got the foliage. You have some always bright, rich green eastern red cedar trees, and then of course all the different oaks. And Burr is a type of an oak tree, so they're native here in Missouri. And one reason these flourish so much in Missouri, we have years ago in the early 60s, they passed a 1/8% sales tax for conservation in the state of Missouri. and that has allowed Missouri to have some of the best conservation areas in the entire country. So they really have preserved wetlands areas. They reintroduced the river otters, which had become extinct in Missouri, and they reintroduced those. But it's an incredible area where you can walk through trails, lots of brush, and incredible amount of wildlife. All sorts of meandering creeks and bridges over them, and just a wonderful place to walk. You'll notice that some of these are asphalt, so a lot of the trails are accessible for even handicapped individuals, but it's one of those places it's easy to get to, and just a marvelous place, a huge 1,100 acres. This is one. What did you call this, Carla? This was a milkweed?
That's a milkweed.
Okay, I had no idea. Yeah, I didn't know what it was. It was right out in front of the nature building, so I'm always taking pictures of everything. Lots of wildlife. This little bunny rabbit, I saw him about 100 yards away, and the 2 days before this, I had been practicing at a NASCAR race on panning. So I had this guy in my sights. I saw him over here to the left. There was a field of clover he was munching, and the dense area to the right here is where he was headed because we were walking along the road, and he was about 100 yards away.
What was the focal length, Margaret, about?
I bet it was at about 2.8. And I say that because I sort of was using, I had a 200 millimeter telephoto,
okay, and
ISO set to about 400. I used the same settings on him that I use on my figure skaters. So I figured if, he hops as fast as the figure skaters do, I've got him. And was able to nail him.
Good job.
And here's another one. This is actually a finch, and he looks like a bullet because they flap their wings and then they bring the wings in close to the body. So he looks just like a little bullet there. And they kind of fly up and down. They don't fly straight across. They're kind of an interesting bird to watch. But anyway, because of my NASCAR work, I was able to capture those two. These, of course, move a lot slower. Lots of wild turkeys here in Missouri. And this is a fall shot, as you can see. And these are young male turkeys. They're called jakes. And they have a little club. It's like a turkey club or a pack. I don't know what you call them. Not a herd of turkeys, but whatever they are. This group, they... Flock? I don't think it's a flock. It's
a gobble. I think they're called a gobble of turkeys.
I'll have to Google that and find that out. But they will make a circuit around the area there where the nature center is, about a 45-minute circuit. And this is right by the parking lot. I took this one on my way. I was leaving. Done for the day, and just happened to see these guys right by the parking lot there.
Is that a bur oak?
Don't know. No, it's not. No, it's not. I think that's just a pin oak tree.
So it turns out a group of turkeys is called a rafter.
A rafter. Okay, that sounds right. Okay.
Rafter, yeah.
Rafter.
Never heard of it, but okay.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Better than a group of monkeys being called Congress, right? Congress.
Now, of course, where you've got lots of, there's bird feeders in the back of this nature center and huge plate glass windows where you can watch them. And with all of the bird feed out there, of course, you've got squirrels. And they're fun to watch. They will do anything they can to get into a bird feeder. They're almost as much fun to watch as the birds. Now, of course, they lay out corn for these squirrels, but they much prefer the bird seed to the corn. All sorts of birds. There's a flicker and a little downy woodpecker. And they're not the only ones that raid the bird feeders. Here's one of those wild turkeys. Now this is I'm sitting inside the nature center with a big plate glass window. I'm sitting comfortably on kind of a bench area with my camera set up, and I'm just shooting the birds outdoors. So this guy's only about 20 foot away, but he's having lunch there. This is kind of the quintessential photo of wild turkeys in Missouri. There's a fountain area right outside the nature center, and they just stop by for a drink of water after eating all that bird seed. I guess they get thirsty. But again, these are wild turkeys, but they're so used to being, you know, in the area eating the bird seed. You can't quite go up to them, but they're just really very approachable. There's a fellow getting a drink. Now this is one of my favorites. It's a red-headed woodpecker, and he's there with a black oil sunflower seed in his mouth. This bird I stalked for a good 4 hours. I was exhausted. And again, this is a handheld 200 millimeter shot, and I am fairly close to him. He's probably about 20 foot away. That's a platform bird feeder that he's at. And if you watch these birds, they're very much creatures of habit. They will come and light on the same area of the bird feeder, and then they'll fly to the same tree to crack their sunflower seed, and then they go back again. So this fellow would often turn his head, but he'd turn his head in different ways. So like I said, it took all afternoon to get the shot, and I didn't know that I had the shot until after I got home. So I must have about 500 pictures of this woodpecker documenting his afternoon there.
Good and sharp shot for saying it was handheld.
Yeah,
through a window.
Yeah, and this again is I did use it was an f5.6 on this one. So I normally on the figure skaters I'm at a 4.0, but this was I was at a 5.6 on this one.
I hate to move us along here, Margaret, but we'll look at, yeah.
This is an area that, this is not Burr Oaks, but this is another conservation area that is very close. It's called Missouri Town, and this is where they have moved a number of the very old buildings. This barn is almost 200 years old.
Wow.
And you see the stone foundation there, and a split rail fence, which are very typical for the area. And they have moved these houses from all over the state to this area where they can be preserved. Some of great historical significance, and others are just representative. They have buffalo there. And I can't resist the chickens. I can't. And this is kind of my Gone with the Wind tribute. This is again at Missouri Town, where they have they've moved all these very historic buildings. This is a pre-Civil War house that you see here, that was taken down. All the pieces were numbered, and then it was rebuilt on this particular site. So it's an original house, but it's not, you know, from. It's not in its original location. It's been moved. But that's it. That's Burr Oaks, and that is very close to where I live. I was very close to my aunt and uncle who lived there for many years, and I would go visit them, and they often went walking in the woods. So just an incredible place. And if you are ever on your way to St. Louis or from Denver, it's right on I-70, so you can't miss it.
Wonderful, Margaret. Thanks for sharing with where you
Great
live
place.
and the wonderful places around you. It really makes us feel close to you. Thank you so much. So now we're going to go to Jeff up a little north. Jeff, introduce yourself.
My name is Jeff Beddoe. I'm an assistant curator, I believe is the terminology, on the landscape theme. And my background is that I actually worked as a professional photographer some 40 years ago for a while. I had some fairly decent training, but then I got into a different line of business in public information for government for most of my career. I retired last year in June, and sensing that I was going to retire a couple of years ago, I picked up some digital equipment and prepared myself to re-enter the world of high-end photography, but I get to maintain my amateur status. I don't do it for income right now, and so that can excuse any kind of glaring mistakes I make by just saying that I'm interested in avid amateur. And this last year has been quite a fast-moving one for me, because I had to come up to speed in Photoshop CS6 and Lightroom from kind of a standstill. I had Photoshop CS, and I was using a number of individual programs in the digital work that I was doing. So I'm going to go to the screen share and start my tour. And my tour is about 40 feet from one end to the other. And what that means is, are we getting my...
Yes, it's beautiful with the sunset on the river.
Okay. In my work in public information, I did a lot of project work, and some of the public information projects would take even upwards of a year. So I would get very deeply involved in certain subjects, and that became a kind of rhythm for me that when I retired, I found myself interested in taking a single subject and devoting a long time to it, and I was lucky to find the Minnesota River. The Minnesota River goes from west to east in Minnesota, and it runs about 200 miles linear, but it's probably at least twice that in terms of the actual length, because there's so many cutbacks and the twists and turns. One of the reasons for that is that the Minnesota River was formed about 15 to 20,000 years ago during the last glaciation, where a massive amount of spillover from a Lake Manitoba cut a very deep and wide channel through the center of Minnesota. It was about 5 miles wide. We have the river that exists today is like a shoestring in a giant tire track, because it's a tiny little remnant of the massive water flow that existed in the glacier times. So it's a very interesting river to me. We're famous for being the headwaters of the Mississippi River. Minnesota is not a river, isn't as well known, but it figured very heavily in the early settlement of the state. So I stumbled upon it last November, and this picture that we're looking at now is one of the first encounters I had with the river. And I had my equipment with me, and I captured this sunrise, and it was spectacular, and I thought there's something about this location that is very interesting to me. So I decided to go back, and we're going to play the slideshow here. In the course of a pretty short period of time, the river froze up. I encountered it in late November. This is actually Christmas Day sunrise. And from the vantage point on the bridge where I was standing, the sun on December 21st at the solstice came up essentially straight down the river from me. And I found that to be very advantageous for the composition and the kind of work that I wanted to do at that time. So I decided to keep going back, and I was going back probably 2 or 3 times a week. I captured some more conventional types of compositions, and then I started to get very heavily into the panorama. The first equipment that I was working with was quite a wide-angle lens on a Nikon D90, which is a DX crop sensor, and I had a 10 millimeter lens on that, which effective focal length is about 15 millimeters on a 35 millimeter. So I was getting, a lot of your distortion and exaggeration of the wide angle lens, but I was also learning how to do panorama and HDR tone compression. I wasn't using the more exaggerated types of HDR effects, but I was using the extended dynamic range. And so at this point, I was learning an awful lot at the same time.
Jeff, are those little animal prints that I see walking across the ice there?
Yes, they are.
Little critters?
There's deer that will go there, and there's a lot of beaver. There's a lot of beavers in the area, and you see a lot of small birch trees that the beavers have cut down themselves. They're very industrious in that area. They've earned their reputation. So in November and December, as I was taking these pictures, it took a long time for the river to freeze up. One of the shots I just had a coating of snow and very thin ice, and it took a while before it to really freeze up. This is one shot that I took where I kind of like the cloud formation, and there's a little bit of a backstory to it. I wanted to get up early, and I was changing my habits pretty dramatically. Having worked as a 8 to 5, 9 to 5 civil servant for 32 years, the occupational hazard of photography of having to get up for sunrises and be around for sunsets was something kind of new and kind of a burden to me. I wasn't sure if I really liked that sort of thing, so I stuck with it. I forced myself to change my sleeping habits around, and pretty soon my inner alarm clock was going off at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But this morning I'd overslept. On this particular morning I'd overslept, and there was just a kind of a gray haze in the sky. I said, the heck with it. I jumped in the car, and I started to head down the river about 10 miles towards Shakopee, where there's a bunch of farmhouses and old barns and rustic buildings. And I thought, well, I'll get some of the that more Americana type of outdoor shots in this particular lighting. And I looked up, and there was this strange, like plank-like cloud running down the middle of the sky, and I could see that it was moving. The timing on it was such that if I raced back to the river, I could catch the sun just coming off the edge of the cloud. And so I'm just sharing that. I had to get off the freeway, do a U-turn, and get right back up about the 8 miles that I'd gone very rapidly. And at my age, that leaves you kind of breathless and excited. And still manage the intricacies of all the settings on everything on the camera. Makes for quite an adventurous life. But I just wanted to share that because I like to read the blog entries of photographers, and they talk about the near-death experiences they have in climbing to get the sunset shot and the moon over a certain position. And there is something to that. You really own your photos when you've cut a little sweat and maybe bled a little bit for them. So this one in particular was fun for me. But so what I was trying to do here is I was trying to basically shoot from a single walkway, a single pedestrian walkway that went from the north side of the river to the south side. The position of this walkway is kind of interesting. It was called Bloomington Ferry, and in the 1840s there was a big log raft ferry that had a rope across the river, and there were horses that would that the carts from the traders and the farmers would get on this big log raft, and they would be pulled across the river, and that was the Bloomington Ferry Point. It also had a much deeper and more ancient history as a sacred site for the Native Americans in the area, and about a quarter of a mile uphill and north of this point, there was one of the largest concentration of Native American burial mounds in the entire state of Minnesota. And that was documented in the early 1920s by the state surveyor, who made a hand-drawn record of the location and the number of these mounds. I was interested in this phenomena back in the 1990s and found a book with that. And I went to the county surveyor's office and I found an aerial photo in the plats for this particular piece of ground. And all of the mounds had been bulldozed in the early 80s, just before it had become illegal, in order to build a ballpark, a set of softball parks for the local park department. But the significance being that this particular bend in the Minnesota River had a very sacred quality and importance to the Lakota Indians that lived there before the white settlers came, and then it had a possibly more profane but very significant value to the pioneers and the settlers, with the ferry being one of the few crossings for many miles in both directions where the traders from the north and south could meet. So it had a historical and a kind of a spiritual quality to it. And I hoped that by going back to this site and capturing it from many different weather conditions and different times of day, that I would be able to, kind of share and kind of imply or kind of convey some of the feeling of this and some of the richness and variety that was available to the river. And I have to say that many of the pictures that I've gotten since November have a certain austerity to them, because the bulk of them were taken in the winter or in the spring before the bloom. And so I'm still gathering the summer pictures, and I'm looking forward to the autumn pictures to complete the annual cycle. So by the end of November of this year, I'll have completed a full year cycle on the river, and then I will select from those pictures an exhibition, and I will do some kind of book that will either be available online through a PDF, or it will be, I might even try to make some arrangements to get it printed, but the focus will be on shooting either east or west on the pedestrian bridge of this one river through the year and through the day. And this was the first of the spring, and this was a little more recently, and this was a full-on sunlight behind me with storm clouds to the east, and it gives you a sense of the richness and the density and the complexity of these oak trees. It's primarily oak that line both sides of the river. There's some cottonwood trees and there's some elm, and this is one of my favorite shots. You can see the shadow of the bridge that I'm staying on from the angle of the sun run across the river right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where's your shadow? Did you Photoshop you out?
No, I'm right there.
Oh,
Seriously.
okay.
Can you see it? That little pimple right there.
Okay. Wonderful.
What a neat project, Jeff.
I'm sorry?
I said, what a neat project.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, here's kind of a throwback. This was taken on 4x5 film with a view camera. It was the first time, and this was just recently, where I actually took my film camera, my rig out there. It's about 29 pounds with the all the appurtenances of the film holders and the big, massive, stable tripod, the Manfrotto tripod that I need for that, the view camera, and I took this one and developed it myself in a tray, and I'm scanning, so it's not purely silver process, but I really enjoy black and white film, and I'm going to be doing more of that, and I wanted to throw this one in to give a sense of the extra range. And now this one is a little indicator of things to come, because it's actually further up the Minnesota River where it joins the Mississippi right underneath Fort Snelling. And after I'm done with this year, pretty much concentrating on the ferry area, Bloomington Ferry area, the footbridge there, I'm gradually extending my purview over the river from all the way back west to its origins, and all the way east, to right at this point, which is the Mendota Bridge. I'm about 70 feet off this water right here, and this was sunrise just before the summer solstice. I went there 2 days before the summer solstice to scout this site, and got this picture. And on the day of the solstice, it was totally cloudy and stormy, so this is what I had to settle for. And this is the last picture of the perigee moon, that where the moon was at its closest approach last Monday. And
the supermoon.
This is one tiny little section of that westward view. The sun has just come up, and you can just see the sun's rays cutting across the foliage here. And this section of the river, if anybody sees the gamut of photos that I've taken, will become somewhat familiar. It becomes like a familiar character in the range of pictures. And
now, do you get any flooding up there?
Oh yeah, this
looks rather high.
This is very high, because ordinarily this tree itself, actually, I've got several pictures from the winter where this is all the bank here is very visible. And the tree is still somewhat submerged, but not to that extent.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate you sharing Minnesota with us, and we'll look forward to seeing your completed project. That's really amazing.
Thank you.
Really, and the thought behind the Native Americans and what you're trying to share. And I think that's one of the great things about the Landscape Photography Show, and the theme is that we learn from each other, and how that integrating these single shots with your landscape photography, like what Margaret, zooming in on the birds, and it's just great to be able to learn from everybody and what they're doing. So now we're going to just take a virtual trip, and it's going to be a fast virtual trip down to the petrified forest. And we're going to start with, how do you do this? Jim kind of touched on what is it we're going to do, and where are we going to go. And the national forests are a wonderful place to start. And when I was, there we go, deciding I was going to see a friend, one of the cool things to do is to just search where you're going, either petrified forest or painted desert. And look at all these photos that came up. And that's one of the reasons why you use the hashtags when you are sharing your photos. Because look, I got connected here with Medicine Tree Studios, which was one of our photographers to watch, Jerry Kittle. And he actually walked me through, just like Jim did, what is an easy way to do a tour at the petrified forest. And here I started talking to Ann McKinnell, where she had this beautiful photo, and she is living the dream, driving around in a RV and doing photography classes online. So connected with Ann. Logan Hubbard was up here talking about some of this, and he is going to be a photographer to watch. And look at here, Greg Kinney with an icon shot of this car on Route 66. So the first thing to do is to start connecting with people that are on Google+. And the petrified forest is at exit 311. Here we are between LA and Albuquerque. There's Kevin, you're over there, not too far away. And on I-40 and right outside of Holbrook, about 15 minutes. And you can see here with the red arrow, there's the north side of I-40 and the south side, where you'll be able to come and see the petrified forest. And if you're going to do a sunset tour, come back through the backside. And all of these pictures actually are on a photo post, which I will include, of here's how to do the painted desert. Now, this is one of the things that I learned from Jerry Kittle, was that this Blue Mesa Road, scenic road, was where you come up here, and this is where, as you can see on Google Earth, all the rock formations are. So we needed to scout out a place for the sunset. And now Jim Worthman was so nice to say, no, this is the entry and it's locked. You can't sneak in early. He mentioned that you could get a permit if you are going with a group to do sunrise. So when you get there, you really see, it looks like a painted picture. It's unbelievable. We were on a very white sky day, so no clouds. So it was kind of hard to have some interest. Now that I know how to do that in Photoshop, we can put some cool clouds in there. Here's the icon car shot from Route 66, and our friend Christoph Felix, he had this same shot. So we all, when you've got something there, get your idea of it. Now here is a boring teepee shot. There are teepees there, and it's like, oh my gosh, what do you do? There's no clouds, there's no trees. How do you make this interesting? Well, you get down on the ground and you look up.
Yeah.
So here, and we think about Margaret, and I know on our photo tour that we had this past Saturday for the Google Plus 2-year anniversary, all we did was talk about the different photo themes. So here is Grass Tuesday, Miss Margaret.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, with a, oops, and going too fast here. Oops, let me get back. Look at there. I got so excited with the photo themes. What's going on here? Let's go back to the newspaper. Newspaper Rock is where you want to go and see all of the petroglyphs. And here was one, now talking about a photo theme. The forest ranger told us that was a spaceship. Now, I look at it, and I don't see a spaceship. I see a Kokopelli kind of bent over, very old. Yeah. But anyway, you can see what you want there. But there's plenty to capture, and even when it's a white sky day, you do see the different variegations through all of the landscape. Here, Jim, the elders. You can see in the rocks, whether it's Joshua Tree National Park or up towards Page, where the Native Americans are saying that the elders are there watching over the lands, and you can see those faces. We've got fun birds here. This raven, boy, I'm telling you, with a personality. And then we came back. We'd done our work to find out where we were going to take our sunset. So the sun was starting to set on the petrified wood. This is one of the reasons why the park is locked, because there's petrified wood that people come in and steal. So the rangers are really on your case. Here was another one that really kind of showed the beauty of, and that's really not touched up at all. Those are the natural colors of that petrified wood. Then we got where we needed to all set up because the rangers were on our tail. They closed at 7 and they were there at the high point to push everybody out. And we got our shot. Now this one's one of my favorites because in between the rocks, those are the San Francisco peaks. I live right out the 30 minutes from Flagstaff, and those Mount Humphreys, and right there in the shadow between the rocks. And that was thanks to Jerry Kittle. We had the right place to go. Now, here's Jim was telling us, $59, amazing, clean travel lodge, and I have a link for Yelp and for TripAdvisor on where to stay in Holbrook. Here, not the outside, but the inside of great Mesa Italian restaurants. And here, this interesting little sign, excellent for breakfast and lunch at Jalapeno Poppers. And when you're finishing up the Painted Desert and the Petrified Forest, there's plenty of Route 66 nostalgia. This is a icon photo that everybody goes to Holbrook gets with the teepee motel and the vintage cars. And then, again, your shots that really are old Route 66 and the decay and kind of what's happened when the highway came through. So that's it for my presentation. I tried to spin you through there pretty fast.
That was fun.
Well, and there is a blog post that will tell you how to do it. So if you're going to the Painted Desert, you'll have all of the links, and it's on Photo Tour Global Directory, which is just about photo tours. So now we're off to Kevin. Kevin.
All right, thanks, Cara. So I'm going to just introduce myself real quick. I live in South Jordan, Utah, which is in the Salt Lake City Valley. And so I'll be talking about northern Utah photos. Just real quick, I am on Google Plus, one of the assistant curators on the landscape photography theme, and then I'm also the owner of Utah Photographers community, and that's not just for Utah photographers, that's just for pictures of Utah. So if you're visiting Utah and you get some pictures, go share them there. All right, so let me get into my screen share. And okay, so I'm just going to start with a quick little map here. I actually have the wrong page open. Okay, so here's just a Google map. I've got Salt Lake City here in the center. The Salt Lake City Airport is just right here. So I just did my maps from the center of Salt Lake City just to give you an idea. The first place that I wanted to show is called Farmington Bay. And one of the things I really love about Utah is it's very diverse. There's just kind of some of everything here. There's obviously everyone knows about the Red Rocks and Zion's National Park, Arches, all those great places down south. But we also have, you know, the ski resorts up north. We've got the Bonneville Salt Flats. This Farmington Bay is just a part of the Great Salt Lake. So I'm going to show you something there. It's a great place to photograph birds. And during the winter, bald eagles migrate there. So there are just hundreds of bald eagles out there. But I'm just going to go through these very quickly. There's so many different types of wildlife out there that I'm only going to touch on a few of them. But you can go out there and get photos of these bald eagles during the winter, and it's they're not shy. They also do what they call a fish kill, and you see here is a dead carp. They poison the carp out there. Apparently they stir up mud and make it so that the plant life can't grow in the water. So every year they poison these, and that's what the eagles feed off of. This is a northern harrier that's just an eagle left at a free meal. So
does it hurt the birds?
It doesn't. So they've come up with a poison that only will kill the carp, and that's it. So
and that's a magnificent shot.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Yeah, your bird shots are amazing.
This is a female northern harrier, and it kind of flew by me a couple times and let me get a few shots. You know, there's just a lot of different wildlife out there, and it's a really good place to go out to get wildlife. It also has some great landscape as well, but That's the main thing. The next place is just really close to that, and you can actually just see it on that map there, but that is Antelope Island State Park. This is the biggest island on the Great Salt Lake. From downtown Salt Lake, this will probably take you out onto the island, probably take you 45 minutes. Maybe not even that. It's really not very far. But out there they actually have there's buffalo out there. You can go out and take pictures of the buffalo. There's a lot of mule deer. There's a lot of antelope out there for the name. Lots of different waterfowl out there. But this is actually just the island. It's actually a fairly big island. So this is a shot looking across one of the bays on the island. But this is just a small portion of the island. It's actually fairly large, so you could spend some time out there. It's a great place to just go out. And these are just places that are really close to Salt Lake. You know, if you were to fly in from the airport, you could be to these places very quickly. The next place that I wanted to show you is just a really good place to photograph sunsets and things like that out on the Great Salt Lake. And on the map, you can see the Salt Lake City Airport is right here, and the place that I'm talking about is just right here. So you're talking maybe 10 minutes from the Salt Lake City Airport to this area, and it's a really good spot. There's a place that's called Saltaire. I'm not going to go through what that is right now, but it's a fairly famous place that used to be out there. So if you have a chance, Google it. But these wooden pieces are from the old place, and it burned down many years ago. That's a view back towards that Antelope Island, so that's actually the edge of that Antelope Island.
Love that.
And then that's another one of those pieces from the old Saltaire. Now I'm trying to go quick here. Let me know how I'm doing, Cara.
Oh, you're doing fine, and it's great that you're just speeding it up. That's great.
Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go to my favorite stuff. Now, I actually run marathons. Where's that going? I run marathons, and so I'm in good shape. So some of my stuff is doing a lot of hiking, but I'll give you some easy non-hiking places next to it as well. The next place I'm going to go is to the Lake Blanche Trailhead, and that's up Big Cottonwood Canyon. And I'm not sure why this isn't working, but so I'll just kind of skip over it here. But Big Cottonwood Canyon is just right out in the Salt Lake City Valley, and this is where two of the resorts are up this canyon. And if we go down to this road, the way that you find this very easily is there's this big S-curve in the road. And the trailhead is here. It goes to several places, but there's a nice trailhead here and some overflow parking.
About every other word, Kevin. I don't know if your microphone is maybe just try it again.
Okay, is this better?
You're going in and out.
I'm hearing him okay.
Is it just you, Cara?
Maybe.
Can everyone else?
Sorry.
Can everyone else?
I'm hearing you okay, Kevin.
Okay, I'll go ahead and keep going then. Right here by the trailhead, you've got the Big Cottonwood Creek, and then I just wanted to point out right across the street. So if you parked here, I told you I'd give you some places that you don't have to walk much. If you just walked right across the street onto this area right here, there's actually a waterfall, maybe a 2 or 3 minute walk over there. But this is the creek that's right by the trailhead in fall. And this is the little waterfall in there. It's called Hidden Falls. You'd never know it was right there because you can't see it from the road, but it's just right around the corner and very easy to walk right to. From there, I'm going to show you, this is probably my favorite hike. I do this hike often, and it is a part of my training for doing marathons. So it's a good hike. It's about 3.2 miles to the lake and then back down. This is just a view. This was actually just this last weekend. The wildflowers are going crazy up there, and that's a view back down towards the valley. This is the lake, and this is one of my all-time favorite shots here. You've got this rugged mountain peak in the background that's called Sundial Peak, and it can make some pretty dramatic reflections into the water. One other thing I really like about this area is it changes constantly. You can go up a week later and it's just a totally different place.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
In the spring, middle of summer, fall, it's all just a. And the other thing about that is you've got this granite rock up there that's got all kinds of colors in it, so it makes it very beautiful. At that lake, there's actually 3 lakes. This one's just right below it. This one's called Lake Florence.
Is that a panorama?
That is a panorama, yep. So that was taken with 4 shots vertically and then stitched together. And that's that same lake. And this is just a little waterfall that it's mostly spring runoff. This was right below the 3rd lake, and it's mostly spring runoff. There will be a little trickle of it later in the summer, but it will hardly even be there. And then you can see the waterfall in this peak. I had to hike fairly close. In the photo it doesn't look very big, but it's actually fairly big. But that is actually just a runoff waterfall as well. There's no creeks or anything coming out of that. That's just purely snow melt off. Up the road from that trailhead is Brighton Ski Resort, which is at the top of the canyon. And from Brighton Ski Resort, you have a whole bunch of different lakes and hikes you can do. This is one of my favorites, and this one is fairly easy. It's about 1.5 miles long. You have to hike up a steep section for maybe 0.2 of a mile, and then it gets pretty easy and flat. And
Kevin, can you mention a little bit about what you did with the sky and the foreground and the mountains there in terms of exposures?
Really yeah, what I was really lucky, and I had this there was 0 wind, but there was this huge thunderstorm coming in, and so it made for a really dramatic sky. Normally when I'm shooting the lakes, I'll have some neutral density filters on, and I'll slow it down so I can get a smoother water. This, I really didn't do anything. It just I was lucky with the sky. So sometimes you just get lucky, I think. And that was just a panorama that I did, the same lake, same day. And then
are those aspen there?
Say that again.
Are those aspen changing
those
color?
Are aspens. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that you'll find up there, is aspen trees and pine trees. And I really like the aspens, the way the colors on them are, as well as the offsetting with the green pine trees. I've always enjoyed that.
That's amazing.
Up from that, you can actually just hike and go to a few more lakes. This is just one that's maybe 1 mile above it, and that was that same day, so the storm was kind of moving off, but just there in time for a little bit of a sunset. Okay, now I'm gonna go here real quick. This is just the next canyon over, and this is called Little Cottonwood Canyon, and this is where 2 other ski resorts are. And I just wanted to real quickly show, right at the base of the canyon, there's a little nature trail here, and you can go in there, and there's a nice little walkway around that you can get some nice pictures of. But if you go right there and look up into the cliffs, there's mountain goats all the time up there, so it's a really great place to go and see those. There's waterfalls all up and down this canyon. This one's called Lisa Falls. I'm going to skip the map because I think I'm running short on time here. But this is called Lisa Falls, and it's just right off the side of the road. So this one you can walk right to. It's very easy. I mean, less than 5 minutes to walk over to it.
Are there lots of people out there doing the same thing, or do you pretty much have it to yourself?
I don't find very many people out there, honestly. In those lower ones, I will find a few people sometimes, and but up at these higher ones that I hike to, that are over a few miles to go to, I'd never see anyone with a camera. Sometimes I'm the only person there, so it's great. So someone come join me up there. This one is just a little.
Yes, those marathon runners. Here we go.
Yeah.
That's right. So this is called Red Pine Lake, and this is just a little further up Little Cottonwood Canyon. This is a fairly difficult hike. It's about 3¼ miles, and it's fairly steep, but it's worth it. This is viewing from, there's a second lake above it, and this is looking down from that lake. You've got some fantastic mountains up there. This is at about 10,000 feet, and this was just last week. So you're getting up in the air where my lungs hurt quite a bit. So
those flowers are gorgeous.
yeah, the wildflowers up there right now are amazing. Okay, how am I doing on time, Cara? I forgot to start my timer.
Well, well, we're way over. So if you just show us the photos.
Let me just breeze through these. This is just called Bell Canyon, and this is my second favorite hike. And this is a very short hike up to this lake, and then from there, all along the trail, you just have things like this along the creek. This is areas up here with these rocks. A lot of rock climbers go there. This is called the Bell Canyon waterfall, and this is the main waterfall. This is in late fall, so there's not a lot of water, but it's normally fairly big, and that's your view back into the Salt Lake Valley from that waterfall. This is another waterfall up further. These waterfalls are fairly hard to get photos of because
Whoops. Lost the sound. Kevin's been muted.
Kevin, are you there?
I'm
Sorry,
sorry, I'm not sure how that happened. Am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So somehow I keep getting muted there, but so I'm just gonna go ahead and end it there, and we'll head back to you, Kara.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing shots there, Kevin, and we'd love to have a blog post on that we can share with how to do that. So wonderful.
Kevin, I had a quick question for Kevin. Those waterfalls, how long exposures do you use on a lot of those?
I'm always using a neutral density filter, and I always shoot an aperture priority and then just figure out what my setting is. Normally I'm about 1 second on the waterfalls, but sometimes I really like to stretch it out and go for 5-6 seconds. It just depends on the waterfall and how it looks. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, now we're over to Tom. Tom, take us on a journey.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. Can you see this okay?
Oh, yes.
All right. I'm based in Carmel, California, which is about 2 hours south of San Francisco on the coast. We're the part of California it's referred to as the Central Coast. So the first half of my pictures are going to be shots along the Central Coast, going north to south. And then the second half, I have to include some pictures of Yosemite. So let me start with this one, which is Natural Bridges State Beach in Santa Cruz, California. And one of the things that's fun here, that we have a lot of rock formations right on the beach, and they make interesting subjects, and never sure what the sky is going to do. This happens to be in December, which is the beginning of our rainy season, so we had some good-looking clouds in the sky, and this was a longer exposure, so we could soften the water. But anyway, Natural Bridges State Park. Move on to the next one now. This is down more closer to my area. This is the infamous lone cypress tree along 17-mile drive in Pebble Beach. This is kind of an iconic shot where all the tour buses stop, and 50 tourists come out with their cameras and take pictures of the lone cypress tree. Actually, I think it's trademarked by the Pebble Beach Corporation. So.
Did you get a model release from the pine tree?
No, but I did have a friend who's a professional photographer that has a very good shot of this, and he was trying to sell it, and turns out he can't sell the image because it's trademarked,
Wow.
I believe. Anyway, the third one here is Point Lobos State Natural Reserve, which is just south of Carmel, and this is a famous area for photographers. Edward Wesson, Brett and Cole Wesson, and Ansel Adams have all done a lot of work here. Edward Wesson lived in Wildcat Canyon, which is almost across the road, just down the road from Point Lobos, and it's not that large a area, but it's got tremendous coastline, tremendous rock formations. One of the interesting things for me here was the orange moss on the trees. It's apparently carotene. This is the same pigment that's in carrots also is in this moss, so it gives you a little more colorful shot. And yes, the water actually is that color. It's shallow, so it's a turquoise color in many spots. Moving along, we're in the middle of our summertime here, June and July into August, where we often have what we refer to as marine layers. And this is essentially a thick fog right along the coast. And this is Garrapatta State Park, and went on a hike where we actually hiked up probably 1,500 feet above the clouds, so we could look down. All the clouds there are over the ocean, and it's an interesting shot looking down over the ocean. But in general, I wouldn't recommend June and July as being the best months to come, just due to the thick nature of the marine layer. It's sort of hit or miss. You get a couple of miles inland, you're fine, but if you're looking to capture the great sunset shot over the water, the sun may sink into this cloud bank and be forever gone.
Yeah. That's gorgeous looking down on the clouds.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is from Pfeiffer State Beach, down by Pfeiffer State Park in Big Sur. This is the iconic rock formation with the keyhole in it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because down around the time of winter solstice, where the sun is on its most southern path, the sunset lines up very well with this hole in the rock, and so this has become a very popular photographic site. You'll have photographers standing down there where the rocks are. I took this from a bluff slightly behind the beach, but you'll have numbers of photographers elbow to elbow all trying to line up for their iconic shot of the sun setting. Of course, it's dependent on the clouds and everything else, but yeah, I mean, we've probably seen a lot of these on the landscape photography theme with at least the light beams coming through that slot.
I love the light and the clouds in this one.
Yeah.
Tom, is this a HDR?
Yes.
Okay, it looks great. Nice job.
Moving along, I guess the final of my coastal shots, I get as far south as Julia Pfeiffer Burns State Park, and this is the infamous McWay Falls. This is roughly an 80-foot high waterfall. It's one of the few waterfalls that goes directly into the ocean, or in this case on the beach right alongside the ocean. But it's often an iconic shot just because the little lagoon there, cove, is shallow and tends to be a nice turquoise color.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. That's another shot that I want.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
Okay, so now I'll switch gears and move to Yosemite Park. I guess there's so many iconic shots have been done in Yosemite Valley, and the valley itself is maybe 8 miles long, maybe a mile wide. The cliffs on either side of the valley rise 3,000 to 4,000 feet, and so.
Where is Yosemite?
Yosemite is about 4 hours east of San Francisco. So it's in the Sierra Nevada mountains. You drive through the park, next thing you know, you're in Nevada.
So would you fly into San Francisco then?
You could fly into San Francisco, San Jose,
or Sacramento.
Sacramento.
Okay.
Anyway, the valley itself, being 1 mile wide by 7 miles long, 8 miles long, only represents about 1% of the total acreage of the park, but
Mm.
probably gets 90% of the visitors.
Mm.
You know, it's certainly some of the more dramatic spots are in the valley, and you can capture so many of these iconic scenes just from your car window. There's roads, one-way roads going east and west through the valley, and this particular one, I think I maybe walked 100 yards or so from the parking lot down to the bank of the Merced River to get the reflection of El Capitan, which is one of the more iconic rock formations in the valley.
Was this an extreme wide-angle lens, or is this moderate?
It was fairly wide. I was probably shooting that about 18 millimeter on a full frame.
Mm.
And right across from El Capitan is we have the Cathedral Rocks, and again, this is the north, the other side of the valley, looking outward, and it's relatively early springtime where there's still a lot of water, standing water around from the snow runoff. Now, I usually go to the valley off season, meaning somewhere between November through May, where the crowds aren't, and much of the rest of the park is closed because the Tioga Road, which goes over and accesses a greater amount of the park area, is closed generally from November through late May. So I will go to the valley during the winter and late fall, early spring, but this time of year I'll tend to avoid the valley itself and go more in the high country just to avoid some of the crowds.
You have a lot of variation in the green, and I'm curious about that. I work with Nikon equipment, which tends to smear a lot of the greens into the same tonal range, and I'm just wondering, does anybody else work with Nikons here, or is everybody a Canon shooter?
Canon.
This is a Nikon.
That's a Nikon.
Yeah.
And what was your process, post-process on that?
This is probably another HDR.
Okay. And which full frame are you working with? I have a D7.
D700.
100. Thank you.
Now here's another shot. This is Mirror Lake. If you want to get a shot with the reflection of Mirror Lakes, you should hurry, not wait too long, because the lake is slowly filling up with sediment and it's becoming smaller and smaller area. So I don't know when it would eventually fill up all the way, but it's certainly not as deep as it used to be.
Is that Half Dome in the background there?
No, I think it's North Dome, but I'm not sure. Half Dome is actually to the right. The rocks that are going up on the right-hand side, you can't see the top of it. I believe that's probably Half Dome. Now, one of the things for me, because there's just been so many iconic pictures taken of Yosemite, that I'm never going to compete against. I like to do some of the offbeat shots, and this is one of Yosemite Falls. You see in the background there, it was done in February, and that swinging bridge with the going over the Merced River. The interesting thing about this shot, it was done about midnight. So
Oh my.
I think the giveaway is the stars in the sky.
Yeah.
It's probably a 30-second exposure, so the stars are just starting to streak a little bit. But I'm not sure if you didn't notice the stars or maybe the lights from the Ahwahnee Hotel there, you wouldn't realize it was nighttime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How many days would you need to spend there to really kind of photograph it well?
30 years.
Yeah, I was going to say California is big.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, they asked, I think one of the great Courtney, and he's captured so many iconic images of the national parks. And one time somebody asked him, what was your secret for getting all these great shots? And the answer was, we just have to keep going back.
Yeah.
Even if you plan a whole week there, doesn't mean you're going to capture every image you'd like to. The weather conditions change, your luck changes, the crowds change. So, but to answer your question, you could probably capture most of the valley in in probably 2 to 3 days. If you want to hike a little bit or go outside the valley, it'd be a little longer.
Tom, this shot and the prior shot, was there a good-sized moon illuminating the landscape?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this shot, again, in my offbeat shot theme, this is the one of the Yosemite Fall moonbows. Now, the moonbows are relatively rare because you have to go naturally where there's a full moon, and also during the months where there's good water flow over Yosemite Falls. And so there's generally, you don't have to be exactly the night of the full moon, but maybe plus or minus a day or two either side of it. Also, the moon has to line up with your position. There's a rainbow angle. I think the optimal angle, if you look at your shadow and the direction you're pointing, it should be 42 degrees to capture the optimal rainbow. There's a professor in Texas, a physics professor, Don Olson. He and his graduate students compute the best days to capture a moonbow at Yosemite Falls, interesting enough. And I think due to the internet, this has become a more popular thing to do. And so if you go up during one of the days during the year where there's a good moonbow opportunity, especially if it's on a weekend, you'll find that Cook's Meadow, which is the meadow that this picture was taken from, is full of photographers trying to capture moonbow. So it's become one of the more popular things to do, just because it's like the keyhole shot at Pfeiffer Beach. It only happens a few times a year to get this.
That's gorgeous. That's truly, truly phenomenal.
The other natural phenomena that happens twice a year is, if you need to remember that the valley itself is a fairly narrow slot, and the sun lines up a certain way with the valley to illuminate the backside of Horsetail Falls, and it gives the appearance of fire falls. And this was a shot, I think it was first popularized by Galen Rowell in 1973. He had a picture entitled Last Light on Horsetail Falls. And again, this has become very popular because although the sun in its transition from north to south and south to north goes through this angle twice a year, one time is in February, the other is July. Turns out in July there's very little water flowing, and so February is the time to capture this. And there's maybe a 1 week window that's you can capture this. The last 2 years have been rather poor just because we haven't had a lot of snowfall here, so the water flow has been minimal. But if the conditions are right, meaning that it's warm enough that the snow is melting, so you're getting water off the waterfalls. There's no cloud cover, so it's illuminated from the side well enough. You can capture what looks like this firefall. And this is reminiscent of the Glacier Point firefalls that happened on and off from, I guess, the late 1800s up to 1968, where they would have a evening campfire at the Glacier Point Lodge and then push the embers over the edge down into the valley, and this became very popular. And eventually in 1968, the Park Service decided they should discontinue it because they were getting such huge traffic jams on the valley floor, plus it wasn't a naturally occurring event. So this is I guess the alternative to that now, which is a naturally occurring event.
Now, you're going to remind me in January about this, aren't you? Tell me which week in February is optimal.
I'll make a note.
Okay.
We need a calendar from Tom. He's an expert on these seasonal anomalies. We need to.
Well, it just makes it a little bit more different.
So that's wonderful, Tom. Do you have some more pictures?
Yeah, I have another one here now.
Okay.
This is a shot from Tunnel View, and now Tunnel View is one of the more famous spots to take a picture. Ansel Adams has his famous clearing storm shot. You know, the joke is there's probably white footprints painted on the parking lot where to stand and 3 holes in the pavement for your tripod.
Yep.
So it's a very popular spot. And, you know, like Bill Fortney has said, I've been there a number of times, but I've not quite gotten the storm combination that Ansel Adams did. So I tried to do something different one night, and I was up there for about an hour and a half doing star trails. And so this is my stars trails shot from tunnel view. The dotted lines were airplanes, and it turns out I think it's the major Yosemite Valley Park is a major east-west route for the air flights. Now, if you get out of the valley a little bit, you don't have to get far. This is Glacier Point. Taken from Glacier Point, you see Half Dome to the left there. To the right, you see Vernal Falls and Nevada Falls, looking up to Little Yosemite Valley. This is
Really
maybe a 45-minute drive from Yosemite Valley itself to get to Glacier Point. If you go up Route 120, which is Tioga Road, this is the road that is nominally closed from November through the last part of May. You get some wonderful vistas. Again, this is looking back towards the valley, and you see the iconic Half Dome there. If you go a little further, you'll get to, this is Tenaya Lake. And then past that is Tuolumne Meadows, and then as you go through Tioga Pass, it opens up the whole east side of the Sierras, which is a great place to go for fall shots. Plenty of aspen shots there, and you have Mono Lake and that sort of thing. But anyway, that's the end of my shots.
Hey, Tom, how are the eastern Sierras during the winter?
Difficult to get to because most of the passes are closed.
Well, but coming from Arizona, maybe not so bad.
Yeah, you could just come up 395.
Well, Jim, you do remember the Donner Pass thing, don't you?
Okay, yeah, there's that.
That was in those same mountains.
Yeah, beautiful shots, Tom.
Thank you.
Wow,
Wonderful.
we have had an amazing virtual photo tour from some fantastic photographers. You guys are just rock. Now, what I would like to see is each one take a picture and write a blog post about it. You know, you explained it, and that way people could come and capture those shots. Now, the question is, we have been going an hour and 40 minutes, so do we want to skip the photographers or just keep adding on to this long show? What do you want to do, Margaret?
Let's just make it quick. We'll do our photographers.
Okay. Why don't everybody get their get your screen share up on your place there, and then we will just go from one to the other. And I'll start. I've got mine up. And my photographer to watch is Logan Hubbard, and he's with Logan's Run Photography. Met him online through Margaret's landscape photography, and we started talking, and he just came to the Google Plus 2-year anniversary photo walk, and we did the Grand Canyon and Williams. This is one of his shots from the Joshua Tree National Park. And one of the things that we've learned is that landscape photographers should learn to do some close-ups too, because the weather doesn't always cooperate. Here's a great finished product that Logan has done with in Santa Fe, and he's actually doing a big photo walk in the next, I think the 9th of July. And here was a landscape photography from the Grand Canyon with some of the snow showing. And now I'm going to go right over to Jeff, and I'm going to click on you, Jeff, and we'll get your stuff up. You're up, Jeff.
Okay, we have Alex Filatov. Can you see this barn?
Yes, yes.
All right. Everybody has seen the Mouton barn. They've seen it probably dozens or hundreds of times. I have. I have specialized in barns for a while, and this is absolutely one of the most spectacular and successful shots of. This actually made me interested in this barn again after becoming quite tired of seeing it in all its variations, because of the several levels of excellence that exist in this photograph. You've got the low clouds in the middle ground behind the barn. You've got the high clouds going across the top of the mountains. You've got the ideal lighting and you've got a perfect sense of proportion in the foreground to frame the presence of the physical presence of the barn, and the background in the framing of the mountains is just such a perfectly integrated image that it really, I dropped my jaw when I saw that after having seen so many of these before.
Thanks, Jeff. Now I'm gonna. Do you have more, or I'm gonna go to Kevin?
I think that's good for Alex. Everybody should go see Alex's.
Everybody, try and get yours up. Kevin's is ready. So Kevin, you're up.
Okay, I'm gonna share Tom Sloan, and Tom's been sharing quite a bit of stuff with the landscape photography theme, and I think he has some really great stuff. So follow him here. He's really good with the sunsets, and really love this shot. Yeah. So that's mine. Thank you.
Wonderful. Who's gonna be next? Margaret, are you up, or?
I've got it. Okay,
go ahead and share your screen.
I'm recommending Summit Sen, and some of his photography, especially bird photography, is absolutely magnificent. Now, these are Indian birds, so I don't know that much about them, but he has such a beautiful way of capturing these bird photographs. And not just birds, but there are wonderful mountains in India.
Wonderful.
And this is one of his. I just love the way it's lights up the sky. But Summit Sen, definitely a person you need to be following if you're into landscape photography.
Wonderful. Tom's up, and Jim, you get yours up, then we'll do you last. Okay, Tom.
Since I was on a Yosemite focus, I picked Michael Fry, who lives just outside the park. Mike's a professional photographer that leads a lot of workshops. He's written several books on photographing Yosemite, and I'm on his email list, and so he generally puts out a blog or an email once a week where he talks about current conditions in the park and say things like, well, it snowed this week, and so we have our first snowfall here in the valley, and he'll often spur me to jump in the car and drive the 4 hours up there. A lot of the special events like the moonbeams and the Horsetail Falls I've learned about through his emails and through his tutorials. So he's been a real inspiration for me, and he does great work, pictures of Yosemite as well as other areas too. So.
Well,
do you know if he takes in boarders?
I don't know.
The occasional stray photographer?
We can ask.
Okay, Jim, are you ready?
Yep.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so my recommended photographer is Dan Holmes. He's a professional photographer based in Ventura, California, and also leads workshops and tours worldwide, actually. In his streams, an eclectic mix. Let me just real quick skip through a couple. Very, very nice stuff. And if you haven't followed Dan, highly recommended. Take a look at his stream, and I think you'll like what you see.
Well, thank you. Wow, we're sure getting some great photographers in the circle, the special circle, and that will be included with our summary, and we always post it afterwards. We'll have blog posts if we have some to help you get to those virtual tours that we just did. And our next show on July 16th will be about night photography. So we're going to learn about some of those star trails and the real how to do it kind of presentation. And we thank you all, and I'm going to end the broadcast, and have a great 4th of July.